New Zealand was formed in this normal imperial typical way. But Australia is different. Australia was started with the project, with the penitentiary project, because the first, of course, Australians, white Australians, were English, Southern English criminals, and the guardians, of course, the soldiers. Only in 1920s it totally changed. The Australians, already perceiving themselves Australians, they and it identifying as a culture to some extent, they said they don't want any more criminals, and any more soldiers, because soldiers were also a problem, because they have introduced also several not very wanted elements to the Australian culture, some brutality and so on, like of course the criminals or the ex-criminals. They were given a chance, and they transformed into a normal citizens sometimes, but there was always a problem. So from 1820 on, Australia is known so much soldiery and criminally, but it's still very English. Even the Australian accent, which I will not tend to produce now, I only know, for instance, that the Australians, when they say the name United States, they don't say United States, they say United States. They have the tendency of giving us the very Latinized A, not the Anglo-Saxon A, the very distinct A, but rather A. Yeah? So, for instance, and there are many other elements which I don't fully understand, so I don't really try to produce, except for once when I was singing the Australian anthem. I don't try to pronounce in Australian. Oh wait, okay, never mind. But when we are talking about Australians, so we are using as an example or some source of knowledge, some source of additional knowledge, the other Anglo-Saxon culture, like when we are doing with the Spanish, one given Spanish culture and the other Spanish language culture. So, and whereas because I'm conducting these lectures on national stereotypes of various nations for 4 years now, I have noticed several that those approaches, those opinions of the students tend to change sometimes radically from one year to another. And in 2019, for instance, the group that I held the lectures for was very much connecting Australians with the European way of living, and with the ecology and all this nature stuff. This was the predominant element in their discussion. They were talking about Australians and as much more similar, as about the nation much more similar to Swedes, for instance, or Germans than to or the British, of course, than to Americans. But they are very welfare state oriented, they are very pacifist oriented or pacifism oriented, and so on and so on. And they are also very much ecology oriented, totally different than Americans. Whereas the group that I just finished the lecture for and the discussion with was much more trying or tending to compare Australians more with Americans, and those elements which would be common for American and Australian cultures were more resounding, and like professional smile, and the farmers, the mass cultivation of land and mass production of meat and the other products made out of animals. And they are optimistic, and they also share the American passion